Hi everybody, I hope you're all well, and it's been another 2 weeks since you last saw me. I hope everyone enjoyed Easter. It was good for me. Spent time with my family and such, and it, just in general with work, it's been very, very stressful again, but we are finally calming down at work, so I can actually relax of an evening and be able to pick up a book and such. So I'm very, very happy, especially because of my next read, which I will mention at the end of this video, that I'm actually going to be able to have time to read in an evening. It's been so stressful again that I didn't actually pick up the book I'm here to review until yesterday. So it's taken nearly like the full 2 weeks for me to actually physically pick up the book and read it. But I have read the book, so that is what I am here to review. And that is, I was just about to say something then and it completely fell out of my head. So weird pause there, but whatever. But that book is The Loney by Andrew Michael Hurley. Forgive the cover because of those terrible stickers that completely ruined my cover, which I hate. And these things I can't stand, and I like to take them off, but this is printed onto the cover and it completely ruins the cover for me, because it's a gorgeous black and white cover and you've ruined it with a big cluster bookboard picture. Oh god, it just annoys me. Anywho, that's me. So this is the debut novel by Andrew Michael Hurley. It was published, I think, about 2007. Oh no, wait, it was a 2015 book winner. Doy, that was really stupid. Why did I say doy? That was a very Phoebe thing, wasn't it? From Friends. 2014 it came out. I had never picked up one of Andrew's books before. I bought this years and years and years ago in a like buy one get one half price offer thing, and just never picked it up, but I have now. So this is a book which is set in the north of England, and it's around the 60s, 70s, and then it jumps to present day, which is 30 years later. So there's a lot of back and forth with time jumps and such in this, and it follows two brothers whose nicknames names are Tanto and Henny, and they are from a very, very religious family. And every year they go to the north of England near Preston and visit this place called the Loney, and it's kind of like a secluded sort of island where his family and various members of the church, including a couple of priests, go each year in order to cure his brother of his affliction. Now his brother is a mute, and so his family very much believe that if they go, Easter time every year, that God or Jesus will cure him, and therefore he will be able to live, a good life. And Tanto he's very much, he doesn't really believe that. He has a very strained relationship when it comes to religion, and because he's a teenager in the 1970s, he's the past stuff and everything. He's very much questioning who he is and about religion and his place in the world and such. But he's highly, highly protective of his little brother Henny. And so they go each year to this place. And in the present day, it's now 30 years later, Henny doesn't have any problems anymore. And in the place where this is set, near the Loney, it has produced the remains of a child, and it is believed has been dead for 30 years. And so it's this juxtaposition between finding out what happened to these brothers in the past versus the present of things, how life has dealt them. And so that is the story of The Loney. So I went into this just not expecting much, and by that I don't mean it's a debut novel, it's going to be crap or anything like. No. I didn't actually know it was his debut novel until I was partway through the book and I started looking him up. I mean, what I mean by that is that I had no clue. I not come across his writing before. I had no clue what to expect whatsoever. But given the cover, I was like, okay, so we're expecting something quite gothic, quite, dark and sinister and all this stuff. And it does have that, but at the same time, it really doesn't. I wasn't impressed by it whatsoever. It feels like a debut novel that this author has ideas and strides and where they want to go with it, but they don't necessarily achieve it. And now that doesn't mean that he's not going to achieve those kind of things in later books. And he has published other books which I haven't come across. So as I said, this is a debut novel and I've never read his books before. So I don't know what his writing has if it has improved or, whatever since then. And I hope he has, because it's kind of like he's got the goods, but he just doesn't push it far enough. I was like, yep, there's a build up, oh, it's falling back down again. Okay, so we're staying like this for a long time. There's a build up, oh, we're back down again. It's kind of like I wanted him to keep that momentum. I wanted him to keep like twisting the tension and the gothicness and the questioning of religion and all that lot more. And it's just, when he started getting going, he'd just pull back. Now, another thing with this book is one of those situations that he flips back and forth between past and present within each chapter, but you don't know necessarily which point you're at as you're reading along. So I'm like, okay, is this past or present? Is this past or present? And the way that I figured that out was that, is Henny talking or not? Yes or no? And if not, then it must be the past. So that it was like, it got down to that level of granularity to be able to determine where I am at any point in a chapter. And each chapter probably has about between 3 and 4 breaks in it where you're flipping back and forth between past and present. So if you see what I mean, it's kind of like, oh, for God's sake, I shouldn't have to be trying to figure out where I am. Just tell me where I am. Or do you have to have it that every chapter has flipping back and forth between past and present? Would it be better if you just had a whole chapter in the past, a whole chapter in the present, and then you have this switch back and forth later on in the last few chapters in when the tension really flips, kind of like how Stephen King structures It, where the children, you have them as children in the past, then you have chapters where you have them as adults in the future, and then near the end when you're having this, you can see how the puzzle pieces properly fit together. You have this constant flipping back and forth within the chapter. I think the Dutch structuring would have made this a lot stronger. There was some eerie things about this book as well, where it kind of related to my family. So what happened was that as I was reading this, I was like, oh, okay, it's north of England, and my family are from the north of England, and this this got kind of it. Andrew himself, the author, is from Lancashire, so it was like, oh, okay, so all of these, right, I know where it's his home, it's where he's from. I'm like, okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about. And then the fact that he was talking about Morecambe, specifically in the 60s and 70s. And I'm like, my parents grew up in Morecambe in the 60s and 70s. And then he was talking about Preston, which is right near Morecambe. And I was like, okay, right. Then a character popped up with my dad's name. And I'm not talking just first name, first and last name. And it was like, oh, right, okay. I've never had that before, that experience before. I had characters like my surname might pop up, or my first name might pop up, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's quite funny. So it's that cute kind of, as it were, go, haha, I'm in a book sort of thing. But this was like, my dad's name is in this book, okay, and it's talking about the area where he grew up in the decades that he grew up in that area. Okay, what else is going to happen now? Then they started talking about the area where I currently live. And I'm like, okay. And then characters started popping up with the first names within my family. I was like, I'm sorry, am I being watched? It was the weirdest experience reading this book, because it was like there was so many connections to my family and my life. I was just like, oh, okay. Now obviously it's a complete coincidence, obviously, but it was just like, wow, not experienced that before, so it was a bit eerie in that regard. But yeah, it was very strange experience reading this book. I have to say, I think he has got the goods for some really gothic writing. He does know how to structure things. He knows how character development, various things. But the actual driven plot, because of the way in which he decided to tell this, not much actually happens. So you know how I usually give a book like 100 pages to capture me before I decide if I'm going to carry on reading or not. I actually got to about page 175 before I kind of closed the book for a while and actually properly thought about this book. So I clearly gone past the 100. There wasn't anything stopping me. Clearly I wanted to carry on the story. I wanted to find out what this secret of this place was. But at the same time, I was sat there and I was like, well, we've met some characters. They've turned up at the place. They've been by the beach. The house is a bit old. And they've talked about Jesus over dinner. And it's only 350 pages and I'm at this point with 175. Do you know what I mean? It was just like, are we actually going to get going now? It was just, for a book that had so much, that eeriness, and as I said, it was like he was leading up to something, but then he pulled back. If he had pushed more, if he had kept that tension twisting and such, I think it would have made the lack of plot better, because you were getting into this by keeping the tension twisted and by keeping the heightened questioning of everything. It's the psychological side of the story then has more of an emphasis, more of a point of view questioning everything. And so by the time you get to the end of the book and various things get revealed, you go, oh right, okay, right. So that constant questioning about religion, about spiritualism, about rights and wrongs of the world, I think it would have had much more of an impact if he had just pushed it more. But as I said, this is a debut novel. It could well be that he decided to pull back on that, what he originally wanted to do, or maybe it's a thing of learning as you publish book. It had the goods, but it didn't quite. It didn't quite succeed there. I just wanted more. I think that's what I'm trying to say. Just to give you an idea of the writing, I'm going to read a bit. Hang on, let me find the one that I had earmarked. That's good. Here it is. So this is that they have arrived at the Loney, and they are talking about some people that they come across. I forgot to mention, I've just realised I forgot to mention that it's written from the first person perspective of Tanto. And throughout the book, in the past and the present. So this is him talking about some people in the area that they have stumbled across. 3 men were coming across the field towards us. They were dressed in filthy green wax jackets and rubber boots. None of them wore hats or had umbrellas. They were local men, either hardened by the weather or possessed of the knowledge that it would pass over in the next few minutes. One of them carried a shotgun over his arm. Another had a white terrier on a chain. One of those ones with a long face and wide-set eyes. A dog drawn by a child. The third man was older than the other 2 and walked several yards behind, coughing into his fist. They stopped and looked at us for a few minutes before carrying on towards the road. "Should we ask them for some help, Father?" said Mr. Belderboss. Sorry, I can't speak today. "I'd rather we didn't," said Mr. Bunce, looking at David, who reassured her by taking her hand. "Well, it's either that or we spend the rest of the week sitting here," said Mama. Father Bernard got out and looked along the road before crossing. The men climbed over the stile and waited while Father Bernard called them. The tallest of them, who was bold and had the build of a querulous bull, had held his shotgun over the cock of his arm and looked at Father Bernard while he explained about the clutch. The one with the dog held its snout tightly closed and altered its interest between that of Father Bernard was saying and the strangers on the minibus. His left arm seemed to hang more loosely, and on that hand he wore a black mitten tied at the wrist with some string. The elder man coughed again and sat down on the broken bit of wall. He was a strange colour, the colour of nicotine or dried daffodils, the same colour my grandfather went when his liver packed in. "Oh dear," said Mrs. Belderboss. "Doesn't he look at all well, does he, Reg?" "Toxoplasmosis, most likely," said Mr. Belderboss. "Toxo what?" "They get it from cats," he said. "It's very common with farmers, and their cats pick up all sorts of things." "What are you on about?" "I read it in a paper," he said. "You have to look at their hands. They don't wash them properly. All they have to do is swallow a bit of the cat's doings, and that's it. I'm right, aren't I?" "I think so," said Father. Mrs. Belderboss shook her head. "I'm telling you it's toxoplasmosis," said Mr. Belderboss. "Look at him, poor bugger." Outside, Father Bernard patted the bull man on the shoulder and brought him over to the minibus. The bull man handed the shotgun to his friend with the dog and leant over the engine when Father Bernard left the bonnet. I could hear them talking, or rather Father Bernard talking, and the others listened or giving the occasional "aye." After a few moments, the man with the dog came over and put in his 2 pennyworth, and eventually Father Bernard dropped the bonnet and got back into the driver's seat. "I think Mr. Parkinson may well have saved the day," he said, responding to the bull man's gestures that he should start the engine. "Mr. who?" said Miss Bunce. "Parkinson," said Father Bernard, "and the fellow with the dog is called Collier." "How do you know that?" said Miss Bunce. "I asked them," he replied. "It's a wee habit I picked up in the Ardennes. Ask a fellow's name and shake his hand, and more often than not he'll help you out whoever he is." "I thought you come from New Cross," said Father. I did, but I was 2 years in the Ardennes after I left seminary." "No one told us that," said Mama. "Ah, you see, Miss Smith, there's more to me than meets the eye." The minibus slid smoothly into gear, and Father Bernard gave a thumbs up, which Parkinson returned with a slight nod of the head. We edged forward, the wheels spinning momentarily in the sludge by the side of the road, and set off towards moorings. The men stood and watched us all the way down the lane, the dog strained on its leash, desperate to tear some things into pieces. So, as you can see, it's kind of like he's got the goods of these people who live in the area who kind of freak him out a bit, but he doesn't. I wished he had kept the tension a bit higher. I wish he had just pushed it a bit more, and it would have been a lot stronger piece. At least that's how I feel. It has an okay story. The ending is not that great. The characters are good, But yeah, sometimes they were a little bit lacking. There was a creepy kind of gothic eeriness to it, but he just didn't push it quite enough. I kind of just feel like this is a decent debut, but it's just that, it's just decent. It's not wow to me. And for that, I'm like, why did this win a Costa Book Award? I just, if I don't know exactly what the award was for, if it was like in the crimes, if it was debut novel, if it was newcomer, I have no idea. So if it was for like a kind of debut novel newcomer award, then yeah, I can see that. But if this was for like the best crime book of the year, I'm like, really? Really? It just didn't have the oomph factor. It was just a bit meh. So yeah, despite the connections to my family, despite you know, decent setting, pretty good characters, and an interesting plot concept, it just didn't quite meet the mark for me. So yeah, interesting debut, just wasn't really there for me. So here's my thoughts on The Loney by Andrew Michael Hurley. So my usual questions: would I read this again? I'm not bothered about reading it again. Yeah, so I'm just gonna say no. Just gonna say no. Would I read any more Andrew's work? I think so. Yeah, I give his work another go, a more recent novel, see how his writing style has progressed, or if it has progressed, I don't know. I think it would be interesting that if he had one where it was like entirely set in the present setting. And I think probably that the reason why he did a past setting with this one, for the bulk of it, was because of um, it was a time before like mobile phones and internet and such. So if you were to bring those factors into this story, I don't think it would have worked properly. So perhaps reading another book where it's set in a more modern setting and see what his writing is like for that, I think that would be very interesting, because the modern stuff in this book is minimal, and um, you don't really get that understanding, as that shift in society and such, between the 70s and modern day. As I said, the bulk of this is in the past. So would I recommend this to anyone? Probably not, but I wouldn't like deter people from reading it. I'd say, if you want to give it a go, give it a go, but I just found it just wasn't quite there. So yeah, those are my thoughts on The Lonely by Andrew Michael Hurley. Have you read this book? I'd love to know what you think. Leave a comment in the comments box below. Give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, entirely to your decide. And I'll be back to my thought, my next read, which I am so excited for, and I am so glad that work is calming down so I have the energy to read it, because it's 900 pages long. It's The Forsyte Saga, Part 1 by John Galsworthy. I really like the Forsyte Saga dramas and such that I have experienced, but I've never ever read it. And this is part 1. Part 2 is for like the next generation stuff of the Forsyte family, which I know the stories, but I'm not that bothered to look into unless John's writing. I'm like, I need to stay with this amazing man's writing. But I will find out very shortly. So I said this like 900 pages long, so it might take me a bit of time to get the review to you guys, but I will get it to you as soon as I'm done. All right then, everyone. Bye.